Hey traders, Cody from Samurai Trading Academy here, and this ES day trading recap is going to be pretty short and sweet because I really barely traded on the day. As you can see here, just a single trade. Started quite late. Usually I try to start around that 9:30, but started quite late here. Went for a couple hours. Very little volume being printed. Not many bars being printed here. Not much volume coming through the market in that couple hours. So just not a ton of opportunity, and still kind of a good lesson, I suppose, in that if you're not really finding things that are fitting your criteria, fitting your setups, what you're looking for, you don't have to trade, right? So there was a couple good swings here, but there just wasn't anything that was really fitting for me in terms of good levels to be trading off of, kind of low momentum reactions off those levels, or just nice smooth pullbacks. So I was just fine taking the one short in here, banking that profit, and then pretty much calling it a day when nothing else really came up. And there was other situations that are potential opportunities for certain types of traders, like this area here, something that's pretty easily identified as an area that has a pretty good supply-demand imbalance there, with a lot more demand at this level than supply in previous tests. So I was watching that one closely, and it did react very strongly. The issue with an area like that is that if you're trying to trade off it, trying to fade this sort of a move here, this high momentum move, you need a pretty wide stop to do that, unless you're able to get in to a trade pretty deep within the area with minimal momentum, something where you can kind of define your risk really tightly. But most of the time, it's difficult to do that. So I don't usually trade these types of opportunities, even though I can identify where price is going to react quite often in advance, but just don't want to get in those situations where I have to take a bigger risk, because that means I've got to kind of aim for a bigger reward as well, which can be hard to get in these sort of market conditions. As you see here, pushed up a decent amount, but really only a few points, and not really worth having a risk there that would probably be at least a couple points. So I prefer those cases where I can risk 3, 4, 5 ticks, around a point or so, and aim for 2 to 5 points. So, largely on the day was definitely pretty flat. We had the inventories and a little bit of jumping around, but after that 1 o'clock, notice how things got really jumpy again, kind of whipsawing back and forth. And that's at least part of the reason why I don't usually trade in the afternoon. As you guys know, I mostly focus on that 9:30 until about 1 p.m. Just because after that, price often gets a little bit more erratic, a lot more fake out moves, a little bit harder for price to trend and to get continuations of that trend. So if you're relatively new to trading ES and you're looking for a little bit of stability and still searching for your consistent profitability, I would suggest that probably your best times to focus on would be before that 1 o'clock, even before noon. It tends to have the best opportunities available. So outside of that, the only other thing to really mention here was just this one that's marked as miss, because that actually was a potential opportunity I could have latched onto. A bit of a higher momentum breakout in here, something that I do look for. I was just looking for a little bit of confirmation, though. It was a pretty clear level with some pretty clear breakout points. I was looking for a little bit of confirmation. That extra bit of confirmation meant that I wasn't able to get in because price kind of took off without me. And that is sometimes the price that you do pay for confirmation. And that's why it's important to have kind of in your approach, in your trading, a balance between needing a lot of confirmation and just being willing to execute. Because for a lot of traders, especially new traders, they're searching for extreme amounts of confirmation. Essentially, they can have a very good trend, and the trend can go for 4, 5, 6 legs, and they're not getting in, they're not getting in, they're not getting in, because they're just not convinced of that trend yet. They're not convinced that it's actually going to move on, and maybe just not quite strong enough. And then by the time they finally become convinced, that's where the trend is over. They've got so much confirmation that that's where everything starts turning around. So it's important to find that balance there. In this particular case, didn't kind of work out in my favor, but still something that I thought would be worth mentioning. So could have been a pretty solid day if I caught that, but no real worries. I'm pretty happy with the result, even though there was minimal action in there. So hopefully tomorrow a little bit more of an active day and a little bit more profit to be had.